I didn't know anything about hospitality when I started, but I believed I could do it, and I knew people could help me, and I put myself in the right places.
Welcome to Business Buying for Financial Independence. I'm Tim Delaney, and I help young professionals buy small businesses so they can escape the 9-to-5 and take control of their time, income, and future. If that sounds like you, hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Today's guest is Ian Joseph. Ian is the founder and CEO of Branch Hospitality Group, a boutique hospitality development firm creating distinctive lodging and dining experiences in underappreciated small towns across America. With a background in commercial lending and real estate development, Ian combines financial acumen with a passion for design and community-driven projects. Ian, welcome to Business Buying for Fi.
Thanks, Tim. It is great to be here, and I can't wait to have a good conversation with you.
Great. Well, let's just start out with giving the audience a little overview of what your current portfolio and position looks like.
So Branch Hospitality Group, currently we have a motel in a small town called Davis, West Virginia, the Billy Motel. And this motel is currently a 10-room motel with a really cool restaurant. It has a very neat vibe. Our tagline is Hillbilly Fabulous. And so it has a very mid-century modern kind of retro hipster vibe. And we acquired that property about 2 months ago and have been operating it now successfully for a couple of months. Our plans are to expand that property to take it from a 10-room motel to a 24-room motel and add a really nice courtyard space that we can use for events, weddings, and things like that. The other property that we have under contract and in process is an 11-unit micro-resort in a town called Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. And that property is 26 acres, and it will be very high-end finishes, very, very luxurious accommodations, and will thread stories of hospitality and the history of hospitality that tie very closely to the Berkeley Springs area and how it is known as the birthplace of American hospitality. So those are the two projects that we have going on right now. In addition, I own several short-term rentals and manage a few for other owners as well through my company, Branch Properties. And the final part of the business that has sprung up completely organically is a consulting business, BHG Consulting. And that has come about because of the stories I've told about what I've done so far in building the business and identifying these properties and identifying design and putting together development teams. And really, most importantly, packaging all of that up and taking it to banks and investors. And there's a lot of people out there who have really good ideas and have properties and want to do something with them. They just don't know where to get started. They don't kind of see themselves as developers of hospitality assets and managers. And there's a key there that just understanding a few of the things that you need to know to get started, and then really believing that you can do that is something that I really try and help folks do through the consulting business.
Yeah, that's a huge piece for people to remember. That I say it a lot. Ideas are kind of worthless without action behind them, and having that help to kind of push you into getting started or showing you where to get started is definitely important. So that's quite a portfolio. Probably keeps you pretty busy. But let's back up to the beginning. Where did this come about? How did you get involved in the short-term rentals, buying a motel, restaurant, and development project?
Absolutely. So the start of this whole thing was because I have a lifelong interest in real estate and building. I studied civil engineering in undergrad because I like science and math, and I like the idea of learning how things are built. And that was a great education. From there, I moved into construction management because I wanted to be in the pit. I wanted to see the buildings being built. I wanted to know how that was done. And what I learned through that was really interesting. Project management, working with subcontractors, organization, project timelines. And that was that was a really good experience. That all kind of led to going back to grad school and learning about finance and the business side of things, which from undergrad on, I was very interested in the business side of building as well. And so I got an MBA and went into a commercial banking career. And through that, I was actually financing special purpose real estate projects, specialty assets. And so putting all that together, I basically uh, wanted to have a mountain house for my family, and so that's what started the trek down the hospitality path. Because in searching for a mountain house, I discovered that I could actually make money, or at least break even, by renting that house to others. And of course, this is the short-term rental game. And so once I realized that, I bought a piece of property in West Virginia and endeavored on building my own house that I would have for my family, and then also operate as a short-term rental. And so, you know, that's where it all started. What happened from there is that I fell in love with the hospitality side of sharing your space, sharing your creation with somebody else, helping them create memories. And the feedback I got from doing that was really impactful on me. And I found uh, this nexus of real estate, of design, of building, and hospitality, and creating memories for people. And that's where it really took off about 2 years ago. And I decided to pursue the commercial side of hospitality development, making that changeover from short-term rental uh, acquisition and development and operation to the commercial side, which is where I see the future of the branch hospitality group.
That's awesome. I want to back up for a second because you mentioned you wanted to get into the construction. You wanted to be in the mix of it, see things, and then you had another inflection point where you went back and got an MBA. When you were kind of shifting careers or jobs or like things there along those lines, was there any aspiration where you're trying to put together these pieces from back then into a bigger package of what Ian is today, or how did that come about?
There wasn't necessarily a plan that has developed the way I thought, to be honest. And I would give people this advice is, and especially young people who approach me now, like, hey, that tell me, hey, I want to do what you're doing, when I grow up, and um, what do I do? Where do I start? And what I basically did was I did what I thought was interesting in the moment, with a very loose kind of long-term goal of being in real estate development. I mean, all the way back to my college days in studying civil engineering, I pretty quickly knew that I didn't want to be a professional engineer, because I just didn't see myself sitting in an office and what I considered doing homework problems the rest of my life. You know, engineers, great careers, and can build businesses. Professional engineers, and that is great. I wanted to be more, you know, in the mud and in the dirt, and that's why I went into construction. So still having this long-term plan of real estate development was at the back of my mind, because I knew that was something that's very interesting to me, but I didn't necessarily plan out, if I do this, then that'll lead towards, having a career in real estate development. Back then I had no idea that I was interested in hospitality. And so, uh, it was a longer term goal, with doing things that I was immersed in learning. That's the most important thing. Just get into things, do things that you can learn from and you can take with you. And as it's worked out for me, those pieces come together eventually when you find that one thing that it is that you want to pursue, like I have with hospitality development.
Yeah. That's a good mindset to have. One of my business mentors years ago told me before he bought his first business, he worked for a very large company, and he intentionally he sought out transfers to different departments just so that he could learn different aspects of how the business ran, because he knew that he wanted to eventually own his own business. Um, but sometimes you don't necessarily know that from the beginning, but you end up in a place where you can tie all those pieces together. That's awesome. So when you shifted from short term to commercial, what was the driver behind that? So not just from the residential short term rentals to more of a commercial mentality. What was the driver behind that shift?
It was a couple of things. It was, started with the realization that you could drive so much more value through commercial real estate development and commercial hospitality than you can through residential. Short-term rentals are residential pieces of property, residential homes that no matter how well you operate them as a short-term rental, their value is capped based on whatever the house across the street sold for. And so that was a limiting factor. And the idea of scaling just became more difficult on the residential side, because you're kind of limited by your own personal financial strength to buy additional properties. You usually have to put down, at least 20% of a down payment, and that makes for very, very slow growth if you're doing it personally. When I started researching and then actually going back and thinking about my own banking career and financing commercial projects, I realized that things could be done at a bigger, faster scale through commercial, because now we're taking a property and helping to drive revenue and helping to drive net operating income, and that is what is determining value, as opposed to capping out because of the comparable properties and their sales. I mean, and that's how residential properties sell is, why would I buy the house across the street for $200,000 more just because it's a short-term rental? It's not how it works. There's one other piece of the commercial side that I have just fallen in love with as well, and I'm guessing it's the same reason that you love business buying and helping people teach people about business buying, and that is the whole concept of the team. Short-term rentals is a little bit more of an individual game. You can build out a team, as I have with my little property management business. But what I love about larger scale and commercial is the people and the team. And like at the Billy Motel, we have like an amazing staff, and just being able to share the wins and the growth and the excitement over this expansion project with them means so much more than, kind of growing a short-term rental portfolio that I have all for myself and I own, 100% of all on my own. So those are really the two aspects. It's the value and the ability to scale, the financing options that come with business buying over residential acquisition is a big factor as well. And then the team and the people.
Yeah, the team is a huge part of why I do what I do. It's fun. It's more. I back up. I guess I've always enjoyed being a team sport player. I'm never doing
Same
the
here.
individual
Yeah.
sports, and it's fun to win together. It's fun to have that camaraderie and everybody moving towards the same goal. So that's huge. And I just want to point out one thing that Ian touched on there with the commercial properties, real estate, or businesses. The value of that asset all comes down to the net operating income. So if you are able to increase revenue or decrease expenses in a profitable way that keeps the business sustaining, then you will increase the value of that asset. And as opposed to that short-term rental house in the middle of a neighborhood, it doesn't matter if you're killing it on profit. It's never going to be worth more than what the neighborhood says it's worth. So it's a great reason to shift gears into commercial. Was there was there like a point or inflection point or something that like made that click in your mind between just continuing on the residential short-term rentals? Was there a moment in time, or was it just a kind of a slow realization?
There was definitely a moment. So I, I ended up buying 2 properties in the Berkeley Springs area of West Virginia. One was a half acre, and I, um, was fulfilling another lifelong goal, which is to build my own house. So my first goal was have this mountain house, and I always wanted to build my own house. And so that's what I bought the first property, this half acre, and that project started, and I was still getting listings in the area for other properties for sale, and I was scrolling and deleting them. One of them made me stop scrolling, and I'm not even sure what caught my eye initially, but then I clicked into the listing and saw where it was located, 5 minutes from town, and that it was 26 acres, and the photos of the land looked beautiful. The homes looked spacious but dated, and I called my real estate agent. I said, I think I have to go see this property. So I went to see the property, and it was one of those moments where you walk on the property and you just see the trees and the blue sky and the mountains and this valley that's within this 26 acres, 180 feet of elevation change across the property, 2 existing houses that are, are still super ugly on the outside. But on the inside, I've fully renovated them now, and now they're beautiful interior homes. The interiors are beautiful. And I just, it was one of those moments I was like, I have to own this. Like this is special. I saw something special. And this was still when I was thinking about short-term rentals as the future. And so I, purchased that property. It didn't happen immediately. There's a decent story there in persistence, that I'd be happy to tell. But once I did acquire it, I set out to the goal of renovating these 2 houses. And while I was renovating the houses, I stumbled across a YouTube video of a gentleman named Isaac French in Waco, Texas, the Waco, Texas area, who bought 5 acres of land and built 7 cabins on it. And this 10-minute video was the turning point for me from going from residential to commercial, because in that video, he explained how he bought this property, built these cabins. He spent a total of $2.3 million on the acquisition of the land and the build out of the cabins. Now, that was a very good price because he self-performed most of the work. So there's an advantage there for sure. But the fundamental of the commercial side is that he did that, operated it for 2 years, and sold it for around $7 million. Now, I don't have an interest necessarily in selling. I love the idea of building a portfolio, a legacy portfolio to keep. But the power of commercial real estate and how those properties are valued, it was instantly the light bulb went off, and I knew, well, that's what I want to do with this 26 acres. I want to build something that is more of a commercial property, or at least operates like one and has the value of one, just like Isaac French did. And so that was the point where I decided to make that shift permanently.
Nice. And that is where your development is going on now, or you're working towards it?
Yeah, so the 26 acres in Berkeley Springs is where we are building the landscape hotel that'll be known as Branch Berkeley Springs, and that is going to be 9 rentable cabin structures. Cabins slash, they are higher end cabin type structures. They are, when I say cabins, sometimes people can think of those as no electricity, no running water. They are very much powered and have running water. But this is going to be a very unique place. 11 rentable units in configurations that are flexible for groups, larger groups, smaller groups, couples, in privacy when you want it, and community when you want to be part of community and gather. And that's something that's very important to our company as a whole, is this combination of design, nature, There's a big component in community. Most companies are in micro resorts or, hospitality, smaller scale hospitality projects really tout design, nature, and wellness. Like wellness is a really big keyword. And we believe heavily in wellness, but we prioritize community as a way to get to wellness in this day and age today in the world when people are, farther apart than they ever have been. We want to bring people together with each other and then also with the communities that we work in. And so we very much are about uplifting the local communities. And when we say community in our mission statement, it is that community among the guests, but it's the community, the broader community that we work in as well, and partnering with local vendors, local shops, to bring that community and gathering into the experience.
Yeah, that's awesome, especially the external community. But even when you were talking about the staying there and having the privacy slash being able to have a community within the resort or within the community, kind of the grounds, I guess, of the complex. I have a large extended family. We like to take vacations together occasionally, but we all need our own privacy. We all, we're not renting one big giant Airbnb with 10 bedrooms. We having that separate cabin like or uh, separate space for each person, each family is important. So it sounds like a ideal situation for
Well, it
groups like
sounds like
that.
you're a future guest.
It sounds like
You'll
it.
have to
Yep.
come and check it out.
Yep. We will. I look forward to it. I mean, the way you describe it sounds awesome. And the word cabin can mean so many different things to so many people. I guess you have to be careful when you're clarifying or using it because
Yeah.
it can, I've been in cabins where even I'm scared to set foot in, and I've been in cabins that are, you don't ever want to leave because it's so luxurious.
I,
Uh,
I, I sometimes I describe them as alpine cabins. I feel like
yep.
alpine cabins gives it like this elevated feel, which is exactly what they are. So maybe we'll go with alpine cabins
Yep.
whenever I explain it from now on.
Yeah. Swiss cabins give it a little European flair.
Right.
Um, so I would, so from that, you have this acreage, you're building out this development. What brought on the motel versus just focusing and going all in on this development?
I love telling this story, so I'm glad you asked. So the ground up micro resort development is something that we definitely want to do more of. But one of our values is also the environmental sustainability, and so the whole concept of taking an existing structure, an existing um, building, and bringing it back to life is just something we get so excited about. So once we had the plan to build the micro resort, Branch Berkeley Springs, then this idea of let's also find existing structures, that was something that we wanted to do for the environmental aspect. Also, the speed to market is better. These ground up developments take a long time,
Hmm.
and so the whole thought of let's find some existing structures. There's thousands of dated kind of roadside motels that were once something really special and have kind of just gone through this cycle where they're now passed over, looked over, and that was like on the top of our mind. And so I happened to be in Berkeley Springs talking to a uh, a gentleman and his wife who own a shop right in town, and they also own a short-term rental complex, a really nice mountaintop short-term rental complex near Berkeley Springs. And I had made some comment to him about, if the hotel or the hotel in Berkeley Springs ever became for sale, I would be interested in, buying it, and would he, like want a partner? And I was half joking at the time, and he actually told me oh, well, that one's not for sale, but the Billy Motel in Davis is for sale. And I didn't know, I'd never heard of the Billy Motel. I also had never heard of Davis, West Virginia. I had heard of the Canaan Valley, which is the larger kind of region that Davis, West Virginia is in. But having deep respect for Jeff, I looked into it, and I also asked him, well, why aren't, it sounded like you really like it. Why aren't you buying it? And he just said, oh, I don't have the time. And it would just distract from what we're doing here. And so I said, all right, I might look into it. So that's what started it all for that first one. And it's just been, it's been such a great experience that it's really kind of grown this second playbook. In addition to the ground up micro resort development like Branch Berkeley Springs, the other playbook that has developed out of this is the small roadside motel that might be looked over by other investors because it's too small. But what we were able to uncover with the Billy Motel is that there's actually some land around it that happened to be owned by the same owner who owned the motel. And so we now are combining this repositioning of existing kind of older assets, roadside motels, things that were, may have once been special. The Billy Motel was always special, so we got really lucky with the first one. It's not tired. It's not that kind of looked over asset. It is the centerpiece of, the Davis, West Virginia kind of social scene for locals and for guests. So it already had a great start, but the whole playbook and the whole idea was that, we can find more of these around the country that are in special places, near special towns, and that we can buy an existing kind of operating motel that might have some land around it and expand it so that it does become something that it has the scale for the returns we're looking for, as well as to be able to really drive like the guest experience forward and elevate the guest experience. So that's the whole concept of how we got into the existing motels, or we'd even hotel, motel, like they're what's the difference really between a hotel and motel? Other than when you say roadside motel, everybody pictures Schitt's Creek and that roadside, literally like you drive up to the door. So I guess that is the difference, which I kind of get excited about because that to me is fun. Taking what is a an older roadside motel and turning it into like this really cool like destination for the region and the area.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you mentioned the Schitt's Creek Motel because that actually came up for sale a few years ago. It is a real building just over the border from me in Southern Ontario. Unfortunately, it was at a point when the border was closed because of COVID, so had no ability to actually go up and look at it.
No.
And I'm sure it went for more than a typical roadside motel would have gone for.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so you talking to this guy, Jeff, he tells you about this motel for sale. You're interested in what, I guess, the name of the podcast is Business Buying. So let's kind of dive into that transaction a little bit. How did that go about?
So I went to see it when I decided, when I realized that there was some land that, could potentially be acquired as well, is when I, asked for the financials and went to see it. The now former owner, she had bought the building in 2015 and done some renovations, opened it as the motel in 2016, and have been operating it since then. And she is this unbelievable, special lady, and with design, she is classy and has an amazing eye for design and building a welcoming atmosphere. And that's exactly what she did with this, with the Billy Motel. She turned it from kind of a nameless, it wasn't even a motel when she bought it, but a nameless roadside kind of, it was like a youth camp or something. And she had this vision to turn it into a motel and added the restaurant because people were asking about food, and she had a little bar, but then people were asking about food. And so she added a restaurant, and she did things kind of against the grain by having the area's first global kitchen, like a kitchen with global cuisine, when every other place just was the kind of mountain burgers, beers and barbecue, the three Bs. And so she had this amazing, created this amazing space. And so when I went up to see it, the challenging thing was that she was basically putting everything back into the property, and she was just, owner operating and reinvesting and constantly just kind of like doing upgrades over time. And so it was really difficult to understand, the profitability, like what is the real value of the property when you can't really see it in the financials. And so what I had to do was basically take the revenue numbers that we could see and apply the expense ratios that we knew or think we can get to, when we apply some of our own process and procedures, as well as, elevating the marketing even more than she had, and doing some of the things like that we could bring to the motel, uh, in addition to the expansion. But we're just looking at the actual acquisition side of things. That was a challenge to figure that out and get comfortable, buying a business that it was really hard to tell, you know, what the profitability was historically. So I had to call on friends, and, one thing I've learned this whole journey so far is that I don't have to have all the answers when I want to do something. I, have to understand that it's possible, and then know that I can get the answers and figure things out. If you have to know everything before you even take any action, you're never going to take any action. And so it's a really interesting, you know, thought process, because in order to believe that you can do something, you have to do it. But in order to do something, actually take action, you have to believe that you can. So it's this, which one comes first? So I realized, 2+ years ago, that I was putting myself in the right rooms around the right people, that I didn't have to have all the answers. That's why I jumped in from the beginning and started down this hospitality path, because I didn't know anything about hospitality when I started, but I believed I could do it, and I knew people could help me, and I put myself in the right places. So same thing here. It's the business is half a restaurant, and I've never owned a restaurant. All I've heard is that restaurants aren't great investments, very difficult, low margin. And so I have a friend who's 35 years in the restaurant industry here in Washington, D.C., and I took him up there. He was more than willing to come with me. And he went on 2 due diligence trips with me to make sure the restaurant checked out. So, he identified ways that we could make the restaurant more profitable. We knew the motel was already profitable. And so putting all that together is how we got comfortable moving forward. The really neat thing about how this all came together is that the financing was very favorable, because the Billy Motel had a great name in the community. The community banks in the area are very supportive of the local economy. And so I actually called the 2 community banks first and asked if they would be interested in providing a term sheet for our acquisition of the Billy Motel. Both of them knew the motel really well, said absolutely. The bank that we ended up going with, from the day I called them to the day they provided a commitment letter, not just a term sheet, but they just went right to commitment letter, 2 weeks. I'm a banker, and I'm like, there's that's unheard of, right? And it was all because of the reputation of the business that we were buying, and its place in the community. So that was really powerful. And not only that, I was also introduced along the way to a nonprofit community development bank that helps with down payment assistance. So we basically were able to acquire the property with no money out of pocket because of the uh, community bank being willing to lend 80% and the uh, nonprofit community development bank willing to lend the other 20% into the acquisition. And you know that was a it was a I don't expect to have that again. We're now spoiled by, you know,
Yeah.
100% financing doesn't exist.
Yeah.
SBA can get close, but
Yeah.
these rates and terms are very favorable. And so that's that was how we got to the point of the acquisition.
Wow. That's there's a bunch of things there that I want to touch on. Just to start with that financing, as you said, nobody should expect 100% financing, but it does happen more often than people realize. And it's out there. I assume that you had some kind of cash reserves and cash available to you in some form. You didn't go into it with nothing available, just from a security and safety net type thing. Maybe not. I don't know. Um,
We did. We put about we put about 30,000 on the balance sheet for working capital.
okay.
Um, but other than that, that was
Yeah.
really it.
Yeah. And that's, so you had some backup there in case things didn't pan out as good as you thought they would. Um, eh, Going back to the profitability and the term, or when you were analyzing the business from the start, you mentioned that it didn't look great on paper because she kept reinvesting. Is that because she wasn't properly allocating those capital investments on a balance sheet and she was probably just putting them in her expense line and things, just to clarify for the listeners, like when you're making in a business or real estate, when you're making a large investment, reinvesting your money into the property, into the asset, it shouldn't go on your profit and loss statement as an expense. It should go on a balance sheet. It doesn't necessarily count as an expense in the year that you're spending the money. What a lot of small business owners do is just put it again in the expense line because it reduces their taxable income for that year. And they don't necessarily know any better, or they do know better and they're just trying to pay less taxes. So it can get messy when you're trying to analyze this. And it sounds like that was the case. Is that kind of what she was doing, was just, buying
That's
new
exactly
stuff?
it.
Yeah.
Exactly it. I mean, um, her her strengths and her zone of genius was the brand and building this unbelievably loyal following of visitors who would come back year after year after year and connecting with them. And that was her strength. And the way she managed the financial side was basically just on a cash basis. So yes, some of the things we had to go through were, you know, I don't remember the numbers exactly, but the point being, why were repairs 40,000 in 22 and then 5,000 in 23 and then 25,000 in 24? What was going on? And that was where we uncovered, oh, well, some of that was actually, bathroom renovations. To your point, those, when you're looking at a purely cash basis accounting, that's not, you know, taking into account the items that should be on the balance sheet. And so that was a big part of it. The other big part was just applying some more reasonable expense ratios on the restaurant side, because it was kind of like break even. But when I looked at the restaurant with my good friend who knows restaurants inside and out, he basically identified all sorts of easy ways that we could make those ratios more reasonable, more what they should be, and actually, get our 5 to 10% margin on the restaurant.
Yeah. So what, you also want to go back to the piece you mentioned about you're never going to know anything. You're never going to know everything. Sometimes you just need to kind of move forward and then learn as you go. Uh, but on the restaurant side, so you're in this short-term rental space. You're thinking hospitality is the way of the future. You're going to build your own little micro resort. You decide to buy this existing motel. Why would you, I think you even mentioned in our previous conversation, Cody Sanchez talks about number one on her list of businesses not to buy is restaurants, and number two is motels and hotels. So what made you want to take on a restaurant on top of the motel piece?
These are great questions. So, and funny story about Cody Sanchez. So I started reading her book about a week after we closed on the acquisition of the Billy Motel and Ish Kitchen. The restaurant is called Ish Kitchen. Started reading the book and got to, I think it's maybe chapter 3, and the whole chapter is like the 9 businesses that she would never buy, and in order, I believe, of which ones which one she has the least interest in buying. Number 1 was restaurant. Number 2 was a hotel. Now, she's since come around a little bit on the hospitality side, because I know she's putting all sorts of content out there about developing a glamping resort. So I'm going to kind of say, okay, she's softening a little bit on the hotel hospitality side. Just makes me feel better. But I just chuckled because I had just bought a restaurant and a hotel. And I mean, she is very pragmatic when it comes to business. She talks about buying boring businesses that just kind of fly under the radar, but just cash flow. And then you kind of put these systems in place and you combine them. Totally understand that. In the hospitality space, a food and beverage program is known widely to elevate everything. And so it becomes very difficult to not get into the food and beverage aspect when you're talking about a hotel or in this case a motel, because of how it can elevate. I mean, the general kind of rule of thumb is if you add food and beverage to a hotel or motel, you'll get immediately get a $10 ADR lift on your room nights, on your nightly rates, just by having an option for somebody to eat there. When it came to the Billy Motel and the Ish Kitchen, currently they both contribute about 50% of the total revenue. So the restaurant's a big component of the overall operation today, but the opportunity that we see by adding the rooms, it'll drive the restaurant, and the restaurant will further drive the rooms, and then our ability to have events. And so the reliance of the overall entity on the restaurant will go down over time as we expand the rooms. But the relationship between the restaurant and the rooms in the motel, for the Billy Motel especially, is just such a huge component. I mean, people come and stay in the rooms because of the food and the atmosphere and the people in the restaurant. And people come to the restaurant who are staying in the motel, but also who are in the area. I mean, since I've bought this motel and restaurant, the number of people in my neighborhood or around that hear that I bought it there and that I didn't, that have a house or visit this area frequently, are like, oh my gosh, I love the Billy Motel. The restaurant there is great. Like, we go there all the time. And so they really rely on each other. But it is a much thinner margin business, for sure. But it's one of the reasons we're so excited about the expansion in the future, because that relationship they drive each other. On the flip side of that, the Branch Berkeley Springs, this micro resort development, we're not going to have a in-house food and beverage program for several reasons. One of them is just building one from scratch is not something that I'm interested in doing. But also, there's already so many amazing restaurants in town and around the area. And why would we build our own to compete with them when we can just partner with them to offer our guests either in room food and beverage, like from the restaurants? We have plans to offer upsells where local restaurants will provide food packages for guests to enjoy on our property, or we can have them go out and go to the restaurants. We're thinking about it as a kind of a 3-level food and beverage program at Branch Berkeley Springs. Level 1, you can buy a care package to have in your refrigerator when you arrive. Level 2 is we'll help you make a reservation at a local restaurant to go eat, or we'll make recommendations. And level 3, if you really want the highest level of experience, we're partnering with local restaurants. We've already talked to several local chefs about coming and cooking for you in your unit, because every unit will have a full service, a full kitchen, really nice high-end kitchen. And so that's still a food and beverage program that'll elevate our ADRs, but it's just not an in-house program where we have to have all of the overhead and all of the, responsibility for extra employees. And with that type of development, again, like I said before, we're not competing with the local businesses. We're partnering with them. Um, so two sides of a food and beverage program, one in-house and one, not in-house.
I like that approach, not wanting to compete with an area that already has plenty of good restaurants. Why not just partner up? The way you're talking about hospitality for somebody that wasn't in hospitality 2 years ago, you sound like you've been in it forever. Um, talking about the ADR, which is average daily rate for those that don't know, and what the food and beverage program can do to elevate the revenue. And then going back to what you said earlier about behavior and not needing to know everything when you get started. To somebody that's just listening, they might think, well, Ian obviously knows everything about hospitality. The way he's talking makes him sound like an expert. So how we know that you didn't necessarily know all of this when you started, and then you lean on people around you to help. How I guess you want to talk a little bit about that and what the importance of taking action and learning and using those resources around you is.
Absolutely. Yes. It's one of the things that I find myself talking more and more to people who reach out to me. We talk about this a lot because it's kind of one of the things you can't unsee, right? So once the light bulb goes off for you, and I'm sure it has for you, Tim, in your journey of buying, growing a business, and now coaching people and doing that, you can't unsee somebody who comes to you, and now people come to me, and the first thing I see is that they're looking for, how do I do this? And they're looking for answers to, like, believe that they can even do it. Like, they don't envision themselves initially, and neither did I. I'm sure you didn't either at the very
Mm.
start, right? This the you, you 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 can't help but want to just kind of grab them and say, you have to believe it first, right? Because belief is the first step. You have to believe that you can get there, and you don't have to have all the answers. That's the second key. Um, and then you just have to take action. So, there's lots of different frameworks. I mean, I like Tony Robbins' state, story, and strategy framework. I like Brian Lubin of Action Academy, his action, iteration, autonomy framework. Those are both, really great. And you mentioned, Cody Sanchez before. She has the contrarian, cash flow, and boring is beautiful framework. They all kind of have similar themes. And for me, the simplest way to explain it is belief, behavior, and feedback. And so what I did as somebody who grew up very risk averse, in a very risk averse household, I probably studied and studied. That was my answer to everything, is study, put in the time, and study. Put yourself around people who have done it, and just observe them, take their recommendations for books, you know, find stuff on YouTube or anywhere, and just consume content to build up this understanding. That's what I did at first. I really just kind of consumed, and then eventually you just have to take action, and you have to go do it. And so my my jump into short-term rentals. I mean, I did it with the safety net, in mental safety net of, oh, I'm going to build this house, and if nobody comes, I'll have a mountain house, like, for my family, and I can afford to have a mountain house from my W-2 income, and that's what'll happen if nobody comes. And thinking back on it now, it was like, you idiot! Like, you're going all in on this. You've taught yourself. You're basically designing this to specifically to rent. You've targeted the market. Like, you've done all the work. I still had that thought, what if nobody comes? And of course I launched the place and it was book solid from day one, like huge success. Right. And so that's some of the, now having done that, now I have this, belief. Oh, well, I don't have to know. I don't have to know everything because I now surrounded myself with people and with tools and to figure things out as I go. And that's why I was comfortable buying a restaurant. And that's why, I'm comfortable doing a ground up development. And that's why I'll be comfortable, buying a motel halfway across the country, which would be my first like fully remote acquisition. But that whole concept of getting in this mindset of believing that you can do something is so important. I mean, it's 80% or more of success. And it's the weirdest thing to think. If you if you don't believe you can do something, you never will. You have to believe you can do it to even start. And so, why start if you from the beginning don't believe that you can achieve whatever that goal is. And to reinforce the fact that you can believe, you just have to jump in. At some point, you just have to jump in and take action. And so that's and then you obviously gather feedback. So that's the belief, behavior, and feedback. Kind of how I think about it. That feedback part is also, is so important. Like you just have to be self-aware and learn from whatever that action you took is, so that the next time you take action, you can, adjust if you need to. Yeah, that uh, it's unbelievably important to have that mindset.
Super powerful. Yeah, I mean, I talk to people all the time as well that just they say they can't. How can they do this? How, I can't do that. Can I? How I can't picture themselves doing these things. Even just buying a small business or starting an own side hustle or anything. But we're all very intelligent. We're an intelligent species. You can figure things out. You can lean on people around you, and but you have to believe it first. And
Right.
I think that's a huge thing. Um, uh, what and then the feedback piece as well. Like it's one thing to believe it and do it, and then if you're not listening or watching or observing or taking in those inputs of, well, this worked, so I need to change my belief around that. Um, how has that? I guess how has that loop played into your thinking around the buying existing motels versus ground up development, and how do you juxtapose those two things with each other going forward in your vision?
The feedback component, is that what
Yeah.
you're asking?
Yep.
Like, so
Yep.
what feedback have I gotten that's driven my, kind of future strategies
Yeah.
and um well, on the financing side, the feedback of buying an existing cash flowing business versus building ground up development is very obvious. So I, the to go out and get a construction loan for ground up development, um, requires a whole other level of belief and of proof to the bank or the even the investors, right? Than buying an existing business that has some historical cash flow. So I didn't realize that when I started, and so that's kind of driving our ideal growth ratio of 3 of the kind of Billy Motel existing business acquisitions to 1 ground up development. Um, so that's been a big part of it. The other feedback I can say on the team building side. So that's the another piece of feedback that I've gotten is interest in working with me, which you know uh, the Tony Robbins would have said was a story in my mind. Like the first person who approached me and said, "Hey, I want to do what you're doing. I think I can learn a lot from you. Is there anything I can do to help you?" I mean, my eyes went big, and I said, "Well, you wanna work with me?" Like, there no, I didn't I had this story in my head that I didn't really have much to offer, but that story has changed as I've gotten this feedback from more and more people who have reached out and said they wanna partner, or they actually wanna be, like, part of the branch hospitality group, and so that feedback, has allowed me to change my story and realize what I do have to offer. And that has kind of even grown the consulting side of the business, because now I realize that, you know, in a short period, in the grand scheme, 2 years, which is when I started this whole thing, was just 2 years ago. In a short period of time, there has been a lot that has happened, a lot of action. I've taken more action than I realized. People, hear my story and they look at me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like you dove right in. You went all in on this, you know, ground up A-frame construction, then you went all in this 26 acres, and you went all in on the Billy Motel in a very short period of time." And so people want to learn from that, and reaching out and wanting to be a part of that has allowed me to now reframe that story in my mind from, "Oh, I don't know what I have to offer you," to, outwardly, talking to people and saying, "Hey, I can help you because I know where you are. I've been there, and I see where you want to go. And let me shorten that time. Let me help you reframe your own story from not knowing exactly where to go to, having some clarity around how to get there and who to involve, and making what you have right now is this dream of turning your 100-acre property into an amazing experience." So that's been really impactful and special for me, is when people start asking me about helping them. And that's where the consulting side of the business, which I enjoy, almost as much as building and owning and operating my own things, because I just love seeing that light bulb go off for somebody else when they go from the deer in the headlights. I have this idea, but I really don't know how to get there, to that whole mindset of, "I get it now and I can do it." That to me is really special. I'm sure you see the same thing in your coaching with folks.
It's
That's probably why you
huge.
do it. I
It's
mean,
huge. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I've seen it in myself as well. It just the way you describe that of, I've always had some limiting beliefs in what I can do and what value I bring, and just having people reach out and say, "Hey, can you look at this with me? Can you help me with this? I'm analyzing, this or that." It's good for my own mindset, and it's great to help other people shift their mindsets as well, and build that belief that they can do it. Like, you can do it. It's not always easy, and maybe not every single person is cut out for buying a business, or starting a business, or working for themselves, but you can, if you really put your mind to it and you really, have that belief in yourself. I think it can be huge. Um, um, So you're busy with your, 2 months into the motel restaurant, kind of getting any big changes that you've made in those 2 months that have, or are you still kind of absorbing it and seeing what's going on with the current situation?
We're still absorbing. We, are using the whole 90 days of feedback. Again, there's the feedback, right? 90 days of just observing, learning, as which I've learned through this first, this is really a first small business acquisition. I thought I
Yep.
was buying a motel. I was really buying a small business that has 10 rooms for people to sleep in, because the restaurant is truly a small business with like 15 employees. And so, um, just sitting back and being a cheerleader for the people and the staff is a great way to start and learn. We're gathering a lot of really great info and things that we can do to, improve the business, but also improve the the morale's great, but the people, the beauty of this staff, the Billy Motel and the Ish Kitchen staff, the beauty of it and is the creativity of the folks, and just letting that come to life. They've already had really good ideas. You see it in some of our social media. So the social media, our Instagram account is really flourishing because we've showed the staff how to take some better photos and how to take some videos, and now they're excited to have this creative outlet to kind of like generate the content, and they're giving that to us, and we have a really talented person on our team who does the editing and actually posts reels to Instagram. So we are gathering this feedback and have shared with them the plans for the expansion, which they're super excited about. And even in that process, they've given us great feedback that we're incorporating into the design. So, being able to involve them and our staff in what will be, their space, they are there every day, is really, is really special. But nothing big yet. No big changes yet, because it was already operating really well. So we're just kind of in that process of planning for what tweaks we want to make.
Which is the beauty of taking over or buying an existing profitable operating business, is that you don't need to go in day one guns blazing and make radical changes. And you should kind of sit back and absorb some of that feedback and learn what's working, what's not, and go from there, rather than, rock the cradle right out of the gate.
Right.
I know there's a lot of stuff we wanted to get through. We're coming up on an hour here. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with before we get out of here?
I would say, the most important thing that I think I could tell people is, if I did it, you can do it. Like I said earlier, very risk averse background. We are all kind of, in one way or another, taught that the traditional path is the safe, and the safe path is the secure path. And, I've kind of learned that at some point, if you want to do something to have the fullest life and the fullest experience on this earth, you've got to be willing to acknowledge that what you were taught and how you grew up may not be the way you want to live the rest of your life. And, that is something to me that's really important. So, I didn't know what I was doing. I trusted myself to learn enough and to build enough of a network, help other people that would then, I could rely on to help me. And that's kind of what gave me the push. But it's not rocket science. I mean, it is not anything that anybody can do this, as long as they start with that belief and understand, that they don't have to have all the answers, but just have a network and have people that they can count on that can help along the way.
Awesome. I think that's a fantastic way to close this out. Ian, you've dropped a lot of knowledge for people, especially around this mindset, believing in yourself, being willing to take action. I think, this is an episode people might want to go back and listen to again, not just from the actual logistics of the acquisition, but getting your mindset right and believing in yourself. So really appreciate all you've shared today. I might have to have you back on again after you buy a couple more motels and do another ground up development and see where we're at, and how you compare those at that point.
I'd love to come back and share, everything I've learned, that feedback again.
Yep. I appreciate it. I'm sure the audience does as well. Thank you everybody for listening, and thank you for being here, Ian. We'll see you again soon. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Business Buying for Financial Independence. If you're serious about owning your time and building long-term wealth, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.